Welcome back to The Outright Effect, a podcast in which unique perspectives challenge us to be better versions of ourselves. We're two ambitious women who talk about how we like to stretch our creativity and work on self-growth to become better people. I'm Shelly.
And I'm Tempsy.
And some of you may have noticed that we haven't released an episode in November. It's late November. We kind of skipped a week there. There's just been a lot going on with the both of us, and we haven't been able to record for about a month now. In case you were wondering, we do record episodes typically in advance. So yeah, it's been a little bit since we've last recorded. So we thought that we would take this episode as an opportunity to catch up with you guys and let you guys know what we've been up to. Obviously, like I mentioned, lots of stuff going on, but also some new things that we've been getting into, like shows and books and all that kind of stuff. So we thought that this would be a great episode to kind of sit down and chat with you guys and kind of get your input and feedback on some things too that we're planning for the future of this podcast. So,
Yes.
Tempsy, what have you been up to?
Oh man, I've been up to a lot. My husband and I decided over almost a year now ago to move our family back to Las Vegas. So my husband and I met in Las Vegas. We worked together. That's how we met. And we started dating, and we actually got married in Hawaii after we moved to Hawaii because he's born and raised in Hawaii. But with everything going on with COVID these days and working from home, we are both working from home. So it just seemed like a good opportunity. If this was there was a best time to move, this might be, just because we could both work from home and, have a lower cost of living. I mean, Las Vegas is a much cheaper place to live. It's a place that we're both familiar with. We're still very close to family. My mother lives in California and my dad lives in Washington, and a lot of my family lives in Oregon. So just a lot of opportunity to still see family. But it was a really hard decision to make. Like, it was very bittersweet. Of course, now, I'm away from Shelly, and luckily, we were recording remotely for a while anyway, just because, social distancing measures. But now we are physically like apart, and we can't even meet up if we wanted to unless one of us travels. So, that's hard. Living in Hawaii for 7 years, you build a community, you build a sense of, this is my home now. And it was emotional for me leaving Hawaii especially the last few weeks. It was tough because, of course, we're going to miss the beautiful paradise, miss the people, miss the aloha spirit, miss my husband's family. He has family in Hawaii. Like I said, he's born and raised there. So it was a really tough decision to make. But at the end of the day, we thought about our goals as a family and what we want to accomplish together. And this just seemed like the right thing to do at the right time. So we picked up everything, not everything, actually. We packed 7 suitcases, all overweight, and we just paid extra for them. The Honolulu airport was completely empty. So, we just gave a really good tip, and they helped us out and didn't overcharge us for the bags that are heavy. They just charge us for the extra bags. So, but it was a lot. You have a 3-year-old with you, and you and your husband are just trying to keep it together and get over here and stay safe, right? Because there's still a pandemic happening, and my husband has asthma, and we just wanted to make sure that we're all staying as safe as possible. But Hawaiian Airlines had a lot of precautions in place. The middle seat was empty, so it actually worked out really well. So my son could kind of play around and rest, and he took a nap on the plane. So, I say all of this because it was a lot for us. It was, again, a very bittersweet situation, and we will 100% miss Hawaii. But luckily, I'll be able to come back for work a couple times a year, and my family will be able to come with me, and we'll be able to visit, and hopefully Shelly can come visit us here, and she can stay with us, and we can just have a grand old time and maybe bank some episodes for you folks. But
So funny.
We just wanted to let you guys know that I'm actually living in Las Vegas now, but it's not going to get in the way of what we're doing here at the Outright Effect and the path that we're on. And so we took a little bit of a break in recording, and so that's why you haven't seen an episode in November just yet. And hopefully this will be the first one, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so hey, I was curious, like, how many people are on the plane with you?
That's a good question. It was actually a full plane, save for the middle seats. All the middle seats were empty, right? So another thing I noticed on the plane was that they had this like, I don't know what it was because I didn't look it up ahead of time, but there's this like cool smoky exhaust type of stuff coming out of the vents, probably to help, suppress any germs from going or sanitize somehow.
I feel like I've seen it before though. Like, I don't think it's like right now. Like, I've seen
Oh,
stuff coming out of the vents before, like on, flights last year and prior.
maybe I
I
just
don't know if it's like
maybe I just didn't
maybe
notice
you just
it.
noticed
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Because the COVID, right? Like, oh, what's this stuff coming out? Maybe you're right. I don't know.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it before, and I noticed it when it was like, I think it was either like a hot or a cold day. Like, like I think it had something to do with that. Almost like, when you're breathing, like when you're breathing and it's like snowing outside or something. I
Yeah.
mean, I've never been outside in the snow, but I've seen my breath outside before.
Yes. That's what it was.
So I don't know if it was that kind of thing. But no, I've seen it before. So I was just wondering because I mean, hopefully, as you know, and probably some of our listeners know, I used to travel a lot, right?
Yes.
So literally at this point, I haven't gone anywhere in like a little over a year, and it's very weird. Like I'm like, am I going to remember what to do when I get to the TSA checkpoint?
I'm sure it's like riding a bicycle.
Um, yeah, and theoretically, I'm supposed to be going on a trip in the middle of next year because that trip got canceled this year. It was the
Right.
Olympics.
Hmm.
And the Olympics is rescheduled for next year. So theoretically, if all's well, like I'm supposed to be going somewhere next year, but yeah, haven't, gotten on a plane or anything this whole year. So I'm like, what is that like? Especially with all this stuff going on today. I mean, I'm glad to hear that airports are not as busy. The airport's probably not glad that, it's so
Well,
empty there, right? Like,
well, in all honesty, the airport was dead because it was the day before Hawaii lifted the 14-day quarantine for
oh,
travel.
yep.
So it
Hmm.
was completely empty, but we picked that date because the next day, international travelers could
It's gonna be jam
come.
packed,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
folks from the mainland could come. And because my husband has asthma, we wanted to make sure we were being as safe as possible. And so
Right.
we got very lucky with those tickets too, because the week we bought it, it was like super cheap, 300 something dollars per person for one way ticket. And the very next week, when that was finalized that they were going to open up, you know, uh, uh, travel without
Tourism, yeah.
open up tourism without the quarantine, as long as you had a negative COVID test within the 3 days before you came or whatever. Um, that very next week, they jumped up to $1,000.
What? That's so interesting because right now I was getting advertisements from airlines because, like I said, I used to travel a lot and literally round trip tickets are under $300 to certain places. I'm like, what?
I'm pretty sure there have been some adjustments made since that happened, but it was crazy. So we got very lucky, and but it was very different,
Oh
very
yeah.
different to travel. I think now that that quarantine has been lifted, as long as you have the test ahead of time from one of their, approved vendors, then it's going to be a lot busier. So,
I mean, it is a lot busier. You can actually tell when you go places
oh
now
yeah.
because, yeah, I forget where we went to the store somewhere, but we went to the mall. We went to Ala Moana and we couldn't find parking. I was like, what? But then I was really confused because we went to go buy food and there was nobody like in the food court. And I was like, why are all the cars here? Like, where are all the people? I don't understand. But yeah, I am still waiting to travel. I'm not in a rush, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like, I'll wait, whatever, hopefully it's good by next year.
Yeah.
But,
Just
I probably will still be wearing a mask on the plane or whatever, like, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
whatever makes you feel the safest and, most
Yep.
comfortable. That's what
Hmm.
matters. So, But
Yeah.
yeah, so there's just been a lot going on my end. And so, we're pretty settled in as much as we can be at this point. We've been here for a few weeks. And, the most important thing was making sure that the office area was set up so that I could start working when I got back. And so that was really important. And of course, having somewhere to sleep. So there was a lot of, coordination that was happening and a lot of things that were going on. So taking a break from recording was very helpful, even though we continue to plan for, what's in the future and things like that. But being able to edit and post episodes probably wasn't in the cards for me. So it was good to take a little break. And I think that's important. When you see things coming up in your future, in your near future that are going to be, they're going to be heavy lifts and going to take a lot out of you. It's important to, kind of set things aside and or reevaluate what you really need to be working and what you don't. So it's good to take a break from things that you can kind of, they're not going to fall to the wayside if you kind of get a break from them. What I noticed when I'm moving or when I moved is, we've been doing obviously a lot of online ordering and things get here so fast, like the very next day. Sometimes even stuff from Hawaii gets here super fast. It's very impressive. And so I know that's probably like common sense and people are like, yeah, duh, you're not getting something shipped from the mainland to an island. Sure. But still, it's still pretty impressive because I hear on podcasts and things that Amazon and Target are like competing for getting things to people the fastest and things like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But to actually experience it is pretty cool. But what I noticed is on the Amazon app, they also give you an option to kind of consolidate your purchase. So if you're buying several things, you can kind of save and help the environment by not getting it as fast as possible from 8 different places.
Right.
They'll consolidate it so
Right.
that you can help save the environment.
You get it in a group,
Yeah.
right? You get all your things at once. Like, yeah, that's definitely what I would prefer. I actually get annoyed when I get like numerous packages and I don't have that option and they put like one little thing in a huge box with like all this stuffing in it. I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, it's been weird in the past. I don't know why I was ordering stuff at the end of October, but I was. And stuff literally took like 2 weeks to get here. Like it would get stuck somewhere and I was like somewhere random, somewhere totally random. I fully did not understand like why it was taking so long because usually when it says 3 to 5 days, it takes 3 to 5 days, but it exceeded that and went to like 2 weeks. One of them was like in my like UPS tracker, like the truck broke down, like it literally said like mechanical issues, and then so it took an additional like 3 days to get here. I was like, oh my God, okay,
Wow.
like can't you just put it on another truck? I don't
Oh
know.
my
Anyways,
God.
I'm sure there's other things that go on there, but yeah, it was like the longest in the past couple of weeks. It's the longest I've ever like had to wait for like very simple items like Banana Republic or something. But
Well, I think it's because your
anyways,
Christmas shopping is probably why you've been ordering a lot more lately because you've been doing your Christmas shopping early, right?
yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna guess that, there are other things coming through the mail that took precedence over my online shopping orders in the past couple of weeks anyway. So I get it. I'll wait,
Yeah, but
whatever.
a lot of people, a lot of retailers are doing their Black Friday early too.
Oh yes. Yeah. So I mean it takes them extra time to like find your thing, put it in a box, send it out, all that kind of stuff.
A
Yeah.
Prime Day
Yeah.
in
I was
October.
I right. I truly was jumping on a lot of the sales. So I mean, I'm sure it was just a higher volume of orders coming through. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I was just like,
It's
where's my stuff? Did it get lost? I was getting worried. I was also ordering like there's a girl who I follow on Instagram who's like she does illustrations like
uh-huh.
cartoons and stuff like that. And she makes like little planner sticker packs, but she's in like Canada. I think it's Toronto or something like that.
Mm.
So like that took a long time too. I'm like, are they holding my stickers in customs? Like, it's just stickers.
Oh, they're
Just
not
give them
laced.
to me.
Jeez. And things already take a long time to get to Hawaii, so that's tough. But luckily, you're not ordering things that are crucial to your life.
No, yeah, no, it's not like, grocery items or like, prescriptions or something
Right.
like that. Because people do like mail-in prescriptions. No, it was like random, gifts for
Right.
December and like stuff I don't need, truly. But yeah.
It's funny because when we got here, when we landed, my mom and her husband met us at the airport and helped us get situated. But they came here beforehand and they set up, they pulled, we had a bunch of packages sitting on our front door, like, you know, in our front porch area. And they were like, wow, you must live in a good neighborhood because nobody took your. They brought all of our packages in and actually started putting things together like chairs.
Oh.
So it was very helpful. And they, because we had a lockbox with a key when, you know, because we were going to be here without it, like at night, they came in and like furnished our living room or our kitchen with a bunch of
Oh, that's
snacks. And
nice.
she brought some cooking stuff from her house that I think were mine from when I was like in culinary school or something. And she brought a bunch of baking stuff, things that they just don't use. She brought it all over, and
Hmm.
it helped so much to have all of
Yeah.
these, like, I mean, they weren't cooking items or cooking materials that I normally use, but I was able to make it work. Like we didn't have a toaster, so I was able to actually toast bread because she brought this like flat pan where I could toast
A
bread on
pan.
the oven, on the
Yeah.
stovetop. So, you know, having them come and help with all of that, they surprised us with all of that, picked up dinner for us immensely. I seriously cannot thank them enough. So I actually ordered my mom something from Valley Honolulu, just a little cute thing, and sent it to her. So to just to say thank you, you know, like that was a lot that they did for us. And they watched Grayson for us while we were getting things situated. We had to buy a car as soon as possible because we only had a rental car for a couple of days and we'd sold our other car in Hawaii. It was a whirlwind, Shelly. But anywho, what happened right after we moved was obviously Halloween. So it was interesting because I wasn't sure how we were going to handle Halloween. But luckily, we had met a couple of neighbors before then. And we kept completely socially distant, right? But we met a few neighbors, some great neighbors we have over here, which we're very thankful for because, of course, sense of community is really important, right? And our neighbor, they said, we're going to walk around, but we're going to be very cautious. You know, we're only going to walk around in the neighborhood. There's not that many kids in this neighborhood. It's actually quite small of a development. And so we just walked around like kind of with them, but distant. And Grayson was able to kind of, I say this in quotes, trick or treat because he doesn't eat candy. So it didn't really make sense for us to take, but we just said hi to people. And some people were handing them out with tongs. You know, I was like, oh, that's
Mm-hmm,
considerate.
hmm.
And I've seen on the news, they have people like
Hmm.
building these PVC pipe,
Make little
yeah,
shoots. Yeah.
shoots.
Hmm.
So that's cool. But we didn't have any of those. But, you know, using tongs is very thoughtful. We put stuff out on a table in our driveway so people could take while we were walking around. But there was really only 5 families walking around as far as we could tell. We saw a couple people leaving for parties. They were all dressed up. They left the neighborhood. So I was like, okay, bye, because we need as much space as possible to stay safe. But then we got home because, you know, my son did get a couple pieces of candy and we turn around and he's already opened like a sucker, like a, what is that? Popsicle or lollipop?
Lollipop.
Not a popsicle, a lollipop. Shows you how out of touch I am. And he was already eating it, like one of those little dum dums, I think, the little ones. And
Hmm.
I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe he had just snuck it open and just ate it. And that was like his only piece of candy. I don't know if we're depriving him of some experience, but even though it wasn't, you know, a Halloween that we've typically known and grown up with, I think he still had a lot of fun. But I do know that there are some parents out there concerned about the fact that their kids just aren't going to get the same kind of Halloween as they did growing up. And you know, some of their kids are older. They have something to really compare it to, right? They've been through a Halloween in the
Yeah. Like they know they're aware of what Halloween means to
past.
them. I think it's interesting. So, I mean, I do know some people whose, kids have asked the parents, right? Like, oh, like, and this was earlier on, like, September or something, right? Like, Mom, what about Halloween? Blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, oh, like, ooh, well, it's gonna be different this year, sorry, kind of
Yeah.
thing, because they know like some kind of letdown is coming
Hmm.
up, right? But then I also like have some other friends whose kids I guess are not super interested in Halloween too. Like they wore their costume for a day, for a few hours, and they're like, done. And so it's funny because I can't remember if I told you this before, but I've never passed out candy before, like in my
Oh no,
life.
you haven't told me that
Like
before.
Yeah, so it was something that we were talking about when I was at work with some of my coworkers because I'm at a new job, so my coworkers and I don't know each other very
Right.
well, right? It's only been a couple of months, and so I was telling them this story because they were asking about like, oh, like, I mean, nobody really had plans, like not many people had real plans for Halloween, but I did mention to them like I kind of wonder what trick or treating is going to be like this year. I mean, obviously not because I have kids, because I don't, but just in general, like, what is that like, right? And so I mentioned this story to them where, like, I've never given out candy in my life, like, from wherever I lived. I mean, basically, I lived in the same house, like, growing up until I moved to where I am now. But, yeah, it's because I think I'm making an assumption here because I don't really know. I never asked anybody. But when I was growing up, living in my parents' home, they live on a hill. Like, who's gonna walk up the hill? Like, they're like at the top of the hill. Like, who's gonna walk up in their costume? Like, no parent wants to like drag their kid up there. Like, it's not worth it for some candy at that point,
Yeah.
right? Like, they're almost at the end of the road. So no kid has ever trick or treated at my parents' house before. Like, that was a new thing for my mom too, because when my parents got married and she moved here,
Mhm.
right, like she was used to passing out a ton of candy, like her childhood home, tons and tons and tons of trick-or-treaters. They'd buy like mass amounts of candy, pass it out like all night long for like a few hours. She came here, she's like she prepared for like the same thing and nobody
Oh.
came. And so, yeah, I've never passed out candy. Then I moved, got our, like Chris and I got married, we got our own place, right? I was like, oh, like, in the area that we live in, there's kids around. We see them outside. So the first year we're like, there's probably going to be somebody coming. Like, there's at least a few kids around here. Yeah, nobody came. I was like, well, this is crazy. This is just a theme. Like, I'm never going to pass out
Oh.
Halloween candy, like, ever. So, yeah, I mean, but truthfully, like I've never had a strong attachment to Halloween. Like I kind of like I'll call it I gave up on Halloween in around like fifth grade. Like I felt like I'm too old for this already, mom. Like stop making me costumes. And so like since then I was like, indifferent about it. Like I didn't have like strong feelings or I didn't miss it or anything like that. But I know other people are super into it. And that's why I'm like, well, like what's going on
No,
this
I'm on
year?
the
But
same page as you.
yeah.
My mom would always ask me, "What do you want to be for Halloween?" And she would make it for me, and it was great. But I was very indecisive, and I didn't know what I wanted. So it was almost like, never mind already. Like I don't want to think of something that I'm gonna
Hmm.
be. So I didn't really care too much about it, and my husband's not too into it either. But the problem is these shows that kids watch on YouTube Kids, or even like PBS, or Disney Plus, Amazon, wherever you find shows for kids, there's always a Halloween episode. And so my son,
They're showing off costumes and it's all fancy, and he's like, I want
and
one of
there's like
those.
songs to be careful of who's at the door. There could be zombies. Like,
That's
I'm just
funny.
like,
There could be
yeah.
zombies.
But that got him really excited about Halloween, and we're not Halloween people, and he just could not stop talking about Halloween. And we're like, oh no, like, what did we raised an enthusiast of Halloween? What do we do now? Because we don't really care about Halloween, but he just was Spider-Man, and it was totally fine. That's another thing. Like, when you're in Hawaii, it's so hot, you can't, all the costumes are made for cold weather, because most places it's
Yeah.
cold
Hmm.
during that time of year. And sometimes in Hawaii, it gets a little bit cooler, but not enough to be wearing like layers or long sleeves with a mask.
Like long sleeves. Yeah.
But
Hmm.
anywho, yeah, no, it was still fun for him, and he didn't have anything to compare it to, so it wasn't really a letdown in any way, shape, or form. But it was just very different than what my husband and I have obviously experienced over the years. So it was interesting. But I don't think this is going to be the norm. I don't think it's always going to be like this. They've already talked about a vaccine. I don't know how many people are going to be taking it. I'm guessing probably quite a few. But I think there's hope for the future and being able to be around
Of Halloween.
well, just
Yeah.
being able to be around people in general, and still be safe. So I don't think that's going to be how Halloween is moving forward. But anywho, what have you been up to?
Yeah. Like for years to come. I have actually been watching a lot of stuff online. I don't know why, but I literally like binge watch ridiculous amounts of Netflix. I don't know. I didn't realize because I feel like, for a while I was so I would say in high school and college, and for some time thereafter, I was really behind on shows. Like there are like really popular movies. All my friends saw that for whatever reason I didn't. I don't know if it was because like I had too many papers to write in college or like because I was also working, and going to school at the same time. So I just didn't have time to watch these movies. But I'm like really catching up on it nowadays, I would say. Um, and, I had also heard about a lot of people, like a lot of friends mentioning all these like shows that they're watching on Netflix or movies or what have you. And, I mean, I still hear about people talking about it today, but I didn't realize that like maybe my watching of Netflix has now exceeded others until like I was mentioning shows that I had watched and people are like, whoa, you're like watching everything. I was like, I am. They're like, whoa, I haven't seen that yet. Oh, I saw it, but it's like on my list. Truthful. I mean, at the same time, though, I will say that I mean, I don't have kids, so I do feel like maybe I have more time to be doing these things, like right in like our mid 30s, right? So, not only that, but I started a book club with some friends who,
That's
like
good.
reading. So some of the things that I've watched, yeah, some of the things I watched on Netflix recently that I really liked is Next in Fashion. It's kind of like Project Runway, but like the upscale version of that. And I hadn't watched a show like that. Like I'm not really into watching those like competition
Hmm.
shows. I was for a while, like a few years ago, where, like Chopped and all those cooking ones were like all the rage, right? But then I stopped watching those competition shows. And so this was the first time that I had in a while. And I think that, with the YouTube channel and like trying to get more inspiration for like types of videos I want to post and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch Next in Fashion. It was, I mean, I thought it was really good. Like if anyone out there likes fashion in general or like, you're crafty, you like to make stuff, this might be a good one to watch. I also watched A Life on Our Planet, which I guess I don't know what to call it, narrated by, I mean, he's in it too, but this guy, David Attenborough, I think he's from England and he's been like a world traveler, like looking at a lot of nature, like that kind of stuff. And the thing that I took away from that is like how much like the world has changed within one person's lifetime. Because I think this guy's like in his mid 90s talking about like back when I was 30, this is, what I used to see. Nowadays it's like this. And that to me was, I think I wouldn't say it was like a wake up call, but it was like a different
Right.
perspective, right? Because obviously I haven't been alive for 90 years like this guy
Hmm.
has, so it was just interesting. I really do like watching shows where it talks about like the planet and all that kind of stuff and just like things that kind of change things up. So I mean another thing that I watched recently was Deaf U, which is a college that is primarily for like disabled
Mm.
kids. And so, for example, this focuses on like their deaf community of students that go to this school. So, all classes, everything is like sign language, like American Sign Language. That's how they're like communicating with each other. If anyone out there is interested in watching this and has kids, I would caution you to watch this without your kids around because there is some of these kids can talk. So it is a lot of
Hmm.
subtitle reading because a lot of the students are used to signing to communicate, but there are a couple of kids who can speak, like, lost their hearing later on in life. And so, they talk normally like everybody
Hmm.
else, and there is like graphic language and all that kind of stuff in there that comes out of their mouths. So, I mean, it is interesting too, just to like sort of be exposed to like I don't know anyone who knows sign language. I don't know anyone who's deaf and like what are their struggles? What is their community like? And I think this is an interesting like snapshot of like college kids going through that. I mean, there also is like a girl who's blind that I follow on YouTube, and like that's kind of interesting too, just to know about like how do you, I mean, for example, one thing she talks about is like making tea, and she has a device that she puts in her cup so that when she pours hot water into it, it tells her when to stop. Like I didn't know things like that
Wow.
existed.
That
So
sounds really
anyways, yeah,
interesting.
it's
Yeah.
just interesting things I find. Yeah. And yeah, she talks about like different kinds of blindness. I mean, this is on YouTube, not Netflix. And she just, talks about
Right.
whatever topic she wants. But it's just interesting to be like, what do you do in your day? But, and how does that work for you? Because I know how it works for me. I know how it is for people who I know who like are basically like
Right.
me, right? But for other people who have different living situations, like
It's
I'm just kind of like,
intriguing.
how does that work? But yeah, it's intriguing. Like I'm like, I wouldn't have known that this thing existed. So, now I'm thinking if something were to happen to me, I know of this thing
Yeah,
that I can get that can
exactly.
help me. So anyways, something else, talking about books and starting a book club. It's just a few of us who are in this book club. Not sure if anybody out there likes reading, but a couple of books that we've been reading recently. One is Lilac Girls. Ooh, I don't know who the author is, but it's interesting. Today's November 11th. I'm still finishing up listening to it. I got it as an audiobook, but it's basically like stories of three different women in three different places back in like the 1940s. So they're in different countries. And it's kind of like this. Well, okay, I'll just say when I first started reading it, I was just waiting for like, when are they all going to meet each other? Because they're in like, one's in New York, one's in like Germany, like, they're in
Hmm.
like different places. Um, it's kind of like there are times within this book that it's a little bit hard to listen to because it does talk about some rough times people were going through in
Right.
other countries. And yeah, not in like not necessarily poverty situations, but
Right.
they're prisoners,
Yeah.
like stuff like that. So that it was kind of like, whoa. Um, so I mean, just beware. I didn't know that it was gonna be like that until I started listening to it, and I was like, wait, I'm trying to like eat dinner and listen to this, and I have to turn this off. It's kind
Yeah.
of gross for me right now. But I mean, another one that I'm actually reading this one. It's called Pachinko. I also can't remember the author. Sorry, I should have looked this up before we started recording. But Pachinko, I think, has won a bunch of awards. I definitely heard about it before, like heard about the title of the book and that kind of stuff, but didn't really know what it was about. It is about like a Korean family, also back in like the 1930s, 1940s time. So I think it's interesting, kind of going back way back,
Right.
way, way, way back, like 80 years ago, basically, right? And so, yeah, it's interesting to hear that story. I think the book is like so far, I've read the first several chapters. It's pretty interesting. If you guys are interested in reading historical stuff, that's not like history driven, like it's not like facts. Like if you're not in a
It's
class,
more
it's
achieving
like
story
it's
than
a good read.
historical.
Yeah, yeah, it's just very interesting. And I think this book has a lot of like good lessons that will probably come out of it too, but still early on. But yeah, anyways,
That's
that's what I've
cool.
been doing,
Yeah,
putting
no,
things
that's
into my
great.
brain, a variety of things. Yeah.
That's what I want to be doing rather than putting furniture together. But what exciting thing I forgot to tell you about is that our backdoor neighbor is a sushi chef and he's on furlough right now
What?
and he made us a sushi platter. He's going back to work
Uh-huh.
next week, but he made us a beautiful sushi platter and it was so good. I mean, he just handed it
That's
over our
cool.
backyard fence and then I Venmoed him.
Like, hey
Yeah,
guys, you want some sushi?
it was
Tossed it over
so
the
good.
fence.
I'll post on our stories about it so you guys can see what, my neighbor's skills, even though I'm living in Las Vegas now.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
And
You
it's kind of
know?
like,
Yeah.
kind of getting the cuisine from home. I know sushi's everywhere, but in Hawaii, sushi is obviously really good in Hawaii too, right? It's pretty much a daily
Normal.
thing. So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was really cool to have that backdoor neighbor being a sushi chef and just getting to know their family. And they have a 3-year-old little girl, so my husband took Grace to the park with them and
Oh,
they
yeah.
stayed, distant and stuff, but uh, at least Grayson got to play with a little kid and stuff. So that was cool.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'm kind of like, can I have a neighbor that's a sushi chef? Honestly, I don't know my neighbors very well.
Right.
Maybe there is one next door
Maybe.
that I don't know about, but
The neighbors that we were
yeah.
walking around with for Halloween, the wife is I don't know, she's a DA. And so the husband was like, yeah, if you ever need help with a speeding ticket, just let us know. And I was like,
Oh my God.
maybe we'll just be super safe. No worries.
Let's not let it
Right.
get there,
But
right?
anywho, so a lot of fun and interesting stuff happening, in this move, but all in all, it went really well. So But it's cool to catch up. I'm
That's
glad to
good.
hear, some of the things that you're doing. It's really, you say you have a little more free time than somebody who has maybe a kid, but in actuality, you have your, your YouTube channel, all the things that come along with that. You still plan with me for the podcast. You have a book club. You still have a job. You do have a lot of things going on. So the fact that you're able to set aside some time to, decompress and relax and watch Netflix, I think is important. So
Yeah, yeah. And truthfully, it's like when Chris works a night shift and I'm just like here by myself, then I'm like, okay, what am I
yeah.
gonna watch for 3 hours? Like that's when it really happens, or like listen to or whatever. But one thing that I was thinking about, because I have been trying to just listen to podcasts in general, obviously because we have one too, that's another motivating factor. But just kind of like, I mean, I think as I've been describing via things I've been watching and reading, like I just like to, hear about like what other people are going through or like how they live their lives, just out of curiosity, because I don't know. I like to be open-minded and just kind of
But do you
like
find
take
that
in
you've been
this
more
information.
curious
But
now
I
as you
feel like,
get older? Because I feel like I was not curious when I was younger
yeah,
about other people's
hmm
lives. I was too self-absorbed. I mean, I don't know. I don't mean that in like a negative way, but you're focused on growing your own life, right? And so now that I'm older, I'm like, man, I really want to know how that person got through this or what they've been through in their life. I wonder why that happens as you get older. I don't know.
Yeah, so I would agree. I would say I was like sort of curious, maybe starting around college time or something like that, but I don't think like the avenues to get this information were as much as they are today, right? Like it was probably harder. Like I would probably sit around and wonder about like how did Bill Gates start his company? But like there was no
Right.
method for me to like find that out, right? Whereas now he's probably talking on podcasts. I think he has a show on like a I don't know, something on Netflix. It's like a hour and a half long, something or other. I think it's called like What's in Bill's Brain or something like that. So like eventually I'll probably get around to watching that too. But we didn't
Right.
have Netflix back when I was wondering these things. So I think I pushed it aside as like I'm never going to find out whatever. And I think nowadays a lot of people are sharing more stories, and I think the more stories we hear, that's what drives our curiosity, because now we're like hearing about it versus like there's this unattainable person who's just kind of out there. I'm never going to meet them. I'm never going to know. But people are able to share it more now. So I think, that
That's
has
true.
made me
Even
more
more with social
curious.
media, right? Like,
But yeah,
not just Netflix, like social media, I scroll and I see somebody that
yeah.
I've seen in a movie and I'm like, huh. And then I go on a deep dive and I have to pull myself out. Like, why do I feel so curious about this person's life? And I
hmm
have to be like, okay, I need to just put this down. This is too much.
Yeah, yeah. But I do like, I will say though, like related to that, I never used to be interested in history. I actually used to hate it. I try to avoid taking history like at all costs because I just can't remember
Me
dates and
too,
names
Shelly.
of people that I've never met before. Like I just can't remember. I'm not a memorization person, so like even like test taking was a struggle for me because I can't just read it and like
Right.
remember it for 5 days. You know what I mean? It's more of like a I don't know. I don't know how to call it. It's like a logical thing, right? Like that's the thing where I'm just kind of like, okay, this makes more sense. And I can, not that you're making it up, but you
Right.
can like reason it out, right? Versus just saying like this happened on this day at this time. Like I can't remember that
Better
kind
as
of
a
stuff. But
story, right? Like
now
it's
I do
more
get,
of an intriguing story that catches your
right.
attention and really
Yeah.
gets you interested in what's going on.
Yeah, but now I do notice that I am a little bit more interested in history, not the dates and the who's and
Mhm.
whatever, but the what happened part is
Because those
what I'm
history
more
books back when
interested
we
in.
were going to
Yeah.
like elementary school and stuff, they weren't trying to like
It's like no,
entertain
no,
you,
no.
or intrigue you in terms of
Right,
what happened.
exactly.
It's just
Yes.
like let's lay out the
Yes.
facts and you just read.
Right. This is what happened. Yeah. 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 And that to me got it was a
Same
little too
here. But
dry.
there were people who loved it. Like my brother
Yeah.
loved history and history books and knowing all that information. So it gets some people, but not me.
Yeah. And I think too, like maybe the people who are interested in it, like, because I was never good at this, but like my imagination when I'm reading stuff sucks. Maybe those people who are interested in it could actually build that story in their brain, in their mind, like visualize it, and that made it more
Yeah, no,
interesting.
I
I was
think
just
you're right
reading it
because my
as it
brother is
was,
an
right? And I was
artist.
like, I don't know.
He's in
Mm-hmm,
marketing.
mm-hmm.
But before, when we were younger, he was a great artist. He would draw all the time, like amazing drawings of just scenes and different things happening. And, so he's more of a creative mind, right? So maybe he can build that story in his mind and kind of see it happening. Whereas we're just reading the words and we're like, oh my gosh, funny that you say that. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
But yeah. So in being interested in more of history stuff, you've just been looking into those kinds of books and
Yeah, books and shows on Netflix. I have been listening to other podcasts, similar, I would say, of similar genres to us, perhaps, where it's kind of a little bit more like chit chatty, like, that kind of stuff. I have also been listening to a little bit more like entrepreneurial type podcasts or like business type podcasts too. And then like the news, which also I was never interested in. But at the same time, I don't know. I just feel like I should be more generally aware of like,
That's so funny, Shelly,
what is
because
going
I've been
on
doing the same
in the
thing.
world.
Like I've been listening to Business Casual, which is a
Hmm.
podcast through Morning Brew, and they have a Business Casual newsletter too that comes out on Sundays where it talks about a specific topic and it's kind of the business aspect of those topics. And um, she did like the CEO, I think, of Netflix, as she interviewed on her podcast. So like more businessy, entrepreneurial kinds of topics. But then like she recommended this podcast called What a Day. And it's kind of, I think the intent of it is to be super non biased, just news, like what's happening and what's the most relevant information you need to know for today. Because so far the episodes have only been like 20 minutes, and that's like right in my wheelhouse. I just need to know what's going on. I don't want you to like influence me or, tell me what it is I should be thinking. I just want to know like the facts.
Right. Hmm. Yeah. The ones that I've been listening to, it's like topic driven.
Mm,
So it's almost like a TED Talk kind of situation. Like that's some of the stuff that I've been listening to. Um,
no,
Not
that makes
specifically TED Talks, but in
right.
that kind of produced in that way. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I've been liking it. It's another way for me to like get information.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been
just
thinking
in
about that. Like, I
general. I
can't
mean,
retain a
yeah.
lot of information. Um, I find myself hoarding information because I think I'll want to go back and look at it, but I never do. So I think my new approach is going to be, if I want to learn more and I can't take notes and reread it and reread it until it sticks in my mind because I have a bad memory, then just take in a lot of information from good sources that are reputable, and things
Yeah.
will repeat and be, like there'll be parallels and things
Yeah.
like that. And that way
I
you
agree.
can start to gain a better understanding of the world in general.
Right, right. Like there's going to be like a repeat topics, like just like you're saying, right? Like it's not like they're talking about it and it's like one and done and it's never going to happen
Even
again
like some
kind of
webinars
thing,
that I
right?
get
Yeah.
emails for,
Yeah,
you
that
can
makes
tell
sense.
that everybody's talking about similar things. So you can kind of pick and choose, okay, did I get enough out of this one?
Hmm.
Or do I want to go to another one that's talking about the same general topic, but might have different insights or perspectives, that kind of thing? Or do I need to spend more time doing other things? That's where it's kind of like, okay, this is how I'm going to build
Right.
my knowledge, bank of. It's not going to be from hoarding notes
Right,
and
right.
going, because I'm never going to go back to them, but I need to either go back to them or spend my time more wisely, right?
Yeah, and it's so funny when you were talking about like hoarding notes and going back to stuff, like I never go back to my notes either. Like I feel like writing it down in certain situations, writing stuff down helps me like remember
Sure.
it for a certain period of time. Like I'm not going to say forever. But it was funny because I was talking with some other friends about like books and stuff like that. And at this point, like I'm not saying I've given up on buying like paper copies of books, but I
Yeah.
don't read things twice. Like I just get like the ebook because some people like to like hold it, right? They like to feel it. And I agree. There's a certain feel
Mhm.
that comes with like flipping through a magazine or whatever versus just like swiping on
Mhm.
your iPad or something like that, right? But I'm like, I don't want like 100 books that I'm never going to read a second time around. So
Right.
if I could just have it on my Kindle, it's just
Not only that, I
not
have an
taking up
Audible
extra
account
space. So,
and somebody
no,
gifted
yeah.
it to me a long time ago. And it's like these, you gain credits. And yeah, and it's great
Yeah, every
because you
month.
can return books
Mm-hmm.
to
Yep.
get your credit back
So,
if it's not
yes.
something you want to keep long term, but you also build more credits as the months go on. And so I'm able to like download books, listen to it. They're audiobooks, but listen to it. I do agree with you. There is that feeling of having a physical book in your hand, but I don't have time to sit down and just read a book for pleasure. You know what I mean? Like I listen to most of my audiobooks and
Yeah.
podcasts while I'm
Hmm.
cleaning, while I'm cooking, while I'm, doing things around the house where I don't need to be, it's kind of like things that I can do without thinking about it. Like I can fold clothes without having to pay attention to what I'm
Yeah.
folding, really.
Hmm.
I can listen to something while I'm doing
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. And so, I mean, the audiobook that I mentioned, Lilac Girls, that I'm listening to right now, that's the first audiobook I'm actually like fully listening to, like from start to end. And I don't have my
it.
own Audible account. I'm just using Chris's because he has like accumulated these extra credits. And I was like, for me, I didn't know if it was going to be worth the money, only because like if I'm listening to something and like driving, I don't pay
Right.
attention to what I'm listening to. It's like that kind of thing. So at first, when I was considering getting an account, I was like, "Is this going to be a waste of money?" but
Yeah,
but
well,
now I just use his credits, so I think I'm good.
hopefully Audible doesn't find out about that. Not just kidding. But I mean, we've been talking a lot about learning and growing and building our knowledge base. And,
Hmm.
as our listeners have probably realized, we've been more and more intrigued about the entrepreneurial mindset for some time now. We've been interviewing people who've started their own businesses or different stages in building those businesses. And, we thought, maybe that would be a good kind of area to kind of focus on moving forward. Not that we can't have these fun chats every once in a while and talk about random topics when we feel like it, but it would be interesting to kind of focus our efforts around entrepreneurial topics. And we wanted to know what you guys think about that. What do you guys want to hear about and hear us chat about? And, you know, let us know.
Yeah, and it can also be like, I mean, so Tempsy and I are planning out like future episodes. What do we want to talk about there? So if there are just like general topics that you're wondering about that you want to hear more about, like our thoughts on it, or just kind of like starting that conversation, I mean, feel free to let us know that on any of our social media channels or sending us an email. We actually just switched our podcast to a service called Anchor, which I believe is pretty popular. I mean, a lot of podcasts out there that I listen to use Anchor to record and like, as their hosting site. But I think you can leave us voicemails. So by the time we're recording this, we haven't figured out how that works yet, but we will let you know once we know how to let you guys like call in and
Yeah.
leave us a message, and because that's pretty cool. But yeah, feel free to let us know, if there's any like personal lifestyle kind of stuff you want us to talk about, or even entrepreneurial topics, maybe anything like career related that we maybe, I don't know. I think part of me just like we've been saying for the past like 20 minutes, like we just like hearing stories and like getting information from other people, and it helps us to kind of like, you know, be a little bit more open-minded or
Yes.
curious or whatever, like learn.
And we want to
And that's
learn
the whole
from
point
you
of what we're
too,
doing here.
you
So
know? So
just
if you
throwing it
have a
out there.
topic or something that you want us to talk
Exactly.
about, give us your perspective so that we can talk about that too. And we'll highlight you on the episode and, just have our own dialogue about it. And then we can hopefully get other people's perspective when we post about it and things like that. Well, that's it for us. Thanks for
Okay.
listening to this episode of The Outright Effect. You can find us at theoutrighteffect.com. Follow us on our social media accounts on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, all at The Outright Effect. You can also reach us by emailing us at theoutrighteffect@gmail.com. See you guys next time. Bye.